trying to teach from a state of isolation. If it's not good, just use your imagination. Remember, rapping's not my occupation. Mr. Captain giving you an education. Yeah? Right? Right? I think so. Today we're going to talk about another rejection of liberalism. In a recent video, we talked about the rise of communism in the Soviet Union. We talked about Karl Marx and his bushy beard, Vladimir Lenin and his cute little goatee, and Joseph Stalin and his impressive mustache. We talked about the radical change that happened in Russia. Today we're going to talk about reactionaries. We're going to talk about fascism. We're going to talk about Nazi Germany and Hitler. I just shaved, so I won't rep the toothbrush mustache, but that's probably for the best because I'm not sure I would have gotten away with it anyways. Communism and fascism aren't the same thing, but they have some similarities. They both rejected liberalism in favor of an authoritarian form of government. And they both had leaders who committed some of the most awful atrocities in our history. Despite some similarities, fascists and communists didn't really like each other. They can even be found on the opposite end of a spectrum. Communism was for radical change, violent and immediate, and towards collectivism. Fascism and Nazi Germany were reactionary, a return to an idealized version of the past and towards individualism. Today we're going to do a quick overview of the understandings of fascism, and we're going to talk about the conditions that set the stage for fascism in Germany, and then we're going to look at Hitler and his rise to power as the leader of the Nazis. Have you ever wondered what life would be like if you were not allowed to think for yourself or express what was on your mind? There have been many governments, including the fascists of Nazi Germany, that have tried to take the freedoms of thought and expression away from their citizens. The Nazis attempted to control what German citizens believed by controlling the ideas to which they were exposed. This went against the idea of individual freedoms, a central concept of liberalism. The main beliefs of fascism can be broken down into three categories: political ideas, where cult of the leader and the elite rule; extreme nationalism, organized violence, military force; and the belief that it's in the country's national interest to expand. Economic ideas, where the government directs private enterprise to serve the needs and interests of the state. So private property and private enterprise is encouraged as long as they're serving the state. They're also anti-union and anti-workers' rights. Social ideas, inequality between individuals and groups in society, based on ideas of racial purity, racial or national superiority, and national strength is more important than individual rights. A key principle of fascism is the belief that society as a whole has a shared purpose. For example, rebuilding the country. Fascists want their particular nation state to dominate other nations in the world. They're also very aware of ethnic and cultural group distinctions. For example, Aryans or Jews. They believe that their goal of dominating other peoples can be achieved only through discipline, obedience, and the creation of an all-powerful state. So what led to the rise of fascism in Germany? One reason, World War I, where they got their butts kicked and then signed the Treaty of Versailles. The conditions of the treaty were pretty harsh. Germany's army could be no more than 100,000 men and no tanks, no navy, no submarines, no air force. They had to return land to France, they lost their colonies, they were demilitarized in different regions, and they had to sign a war guilt clause, which placed blame on them. Talk about embarrassing. Plus, a reparations commission decided Germany should pay $33 billion American, of which they eventually paid $713 million. Immediately after the First World War in 1919, Germany became a republic with a modern, liberal, democratic political structure, and they became known as the Weimar Republic. Even though Germany had little choice in signing the treaty, much of the German population blamed the government for the humiliation and economic hardship the treaty caused for years to come. This resentment would undermine German confidence in their liberal democratic government. And furthermore, many Germans associated liberalism with the countries that defeated them in World War I. On top of this, the German economy was in ruins. Germany had trouble with the reparation payments, you think, and massive inflation saw savings being wiped out. Just when the economy started to improve, the stock market crash of 1929 and the Great Depression plunged the country into economic hardship once again. Take a look at this chart. It shows the German marks for each American dollar and how it decreases in value so dramatically over 5 years. Crazy. Another reason that fascism was able to rise up in Germany is that they had a legacy of authoritarian rule. Since the creation of the German Empire in 1871, the government had been authoritarian in many ways. The Kaiser, oh my goodness, look at that mustache. I wish I hadn't shaved. Anyways, the Kaiser and the Chancellor held power and created a welfare state with health, accident, old age, and disability insurance. So most Germans saw authoritarian systems as benevolent, like they provided for them, also effective. When the Weimar Republic failed to provide Germans with any hope in hard times, they looked back to authoritarian rule, and a guy named Hitler capitalized on their fears. Hitler became the leader of the Nazi Party, which promoted absolute nationalism, which called for the unification of all German speakers. They used paramilitary organizations to stifle dissent and to terrorize the opposition. Centralized decision-making in a single leader to whom everyone owed loyalty. It helps that Hitler was pretty well-spoken and people generally liked him. The Nazis' advocacy of law and order appealed to many Germans who were tired of years of instability. They elected the Nazi Party into power. The story of how the Nazis consolidated their power is kind of interesting. In November 1932, the Nazi Party held 1/3 of the seats in the Reichstag, which was their parliament, and by 1933, Hitler was named Chancellor, a position where he had the opportunity to make some decisions and change some laws. He capitalized on the situation and he quickly turned Germany into a totalitarian state. Then a fire in the Reichstag was used by Hitler to spread fear of a communist takeover. But it's believed that the Nazis actually started the fire and used the incident to create fear and solidify power to restrict freedoms. I don't know if you've seen Tiger King on Netflix, and I'm not necessarily recommending it, but this fire is similar to the fire set to the crocodile pen in one of the episodes in Tiger King. I don't know, it's a little suspicious and it reminds me a little bit of this fire and the fascists and the communists. I haven't seen the whole series, so don't spoil it for me, but maybe you see the similarities. Hitler also passed the Reichstag Fire Decree and the Enabling Act in 1933. This was a set of laws that made it possible for him to restrict personal freedoms, freedom of opinion, freedom of the press, and freedom of organization and assembly. He eliminated the privacy of mail, telegrams, and phone conversations, eliminated the need for warrants to conduct searches, passed legislation through the office of the Chancellor without the approval of the Reichstag, and he banned all political parties except the Nazi Party. So he basically got to government to destroy the government, totally rechange the laws and rewrite the way they did things to benefit him, obviously. So the Nazis purged Germany of opposition to them. When President Hindenburg died August 19th, 1934, Hitler declared himself Führer. While individual rights suffered, the economy did benefit. 6 million Germans were unemployed in 1932, and in 1936, only 1 million were unemployed. Foreign imports were restricted to promote German products and designed to achieve autarky, which is self-sufficiency and independence from other nations. The strict enforcement of law and order gave people a sense of security. Rallies and propaganda brought hope and confidence. Some of the craziest things about the Nazis was their beliefs in social Darwinism, eugenics, and genocide. The Nazi ideology included a racial theory that claimed that Germans formed a superior Aryan race. They also used Jews as a scapegoat. They claimed that the Jews were the cause of many of Germany's problems. Anti-Semitism was not unique to Germany, but Jews had been persecuted for religious reasons for many years. Nazi ideology promoted the superiority of the Aryan race and eugenics, which is the controlling of human reproduction so that desirable genetic traits are encouraged and undesirable traits are eliminated. 9 to 11 million people, including 6 million Jews, who were considered Untermenschen or subhumans, were killed by the Nazis during the Holocaust. So I know we're ending on a bit of a downer there, but let's recap what we've talked about. The rise of fascism in Germany, how it's a rejection of liberalism. What were the conditions in Germany that made it possible for Hitler and the Nazis to rise to power? And then what was life like in Nazi Germany? How did they consolidate their power? I know this was a fairly rapid overview of the rise of fascism in Germany, but I hope you can see how it's a rejection of liberal ideas and how Hitler was a jerk. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll include some links to some other videos that might help you out. Have a good day.
Mr. Captain giving you an education.
Yeah, right?